My parents hated me when I bought a house and didn't give it to my spoiled brother. Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories, and leave your like on the video. I learned early that love in my family wasn't distributed equally. It was rationed, carefully measured, and my brother got the lion's share while I survived on scraps. My parents never announced their favoritism. They didn't need to. It was in every action, every decision. When my brother wanted new sneakers, they appeared within days. When I needed school supplies, I heard lectures about budgeting and responsibility. He was 12 when they bought him his first laptop. I was 15 when I bought my own with money from my weekend job at a diner. "Your brother needs support," my mother would say, as if it explained everything. "He's more sensitive. You've always been the strong one." Strong. That word became my cage. It meant I didn't need encouragement when I made honor roll. It meant I didn't deserve comfort when I came home exhausted from double shifts. It meant my accomplishments were expected while his mediocrity deserved celebration. The summer I turned 16, I worked 40 hours a week at a warehouse while my brother spent 2 months at a summer camp in Colorado. My back ached from lifting boxes, my hands were rough with calluses. Meanwhile, he sent postcards about horseback riding and campfires. "Isn't it wonderful that he's having such formative experiences?" my father said at dinner one night, displaying one of the postcards on the refrigerator. I looked down at my calloused hands and said nothing. When something broke in the house, I was questioned first. When money went missing, I was accused. When my brother crashed my mother's car during his first week with a license, she cried about how traumatized he must be. When I accidentally scratched my father's car door with my bike 3 years earlier, I'd paid for the repair out of my own savings. The pattern was so consistent it became invisible to everyone but me. My brother floated through life on excuses and second chances. He quit jobs after weeks because they were too stressful or didn't appreciate him. He dropped out of community college twice. Each time, my parents nodded sympathetically and assured him he'd find his path. I found my path because I had to. At 17, I was working 2 jobs and saving every dollar. At 18, I moved into a tiny studio apartment that smelled like old carpet and cooking oil. At 19, I enrolled in cosmetology school while working nights at a 24-hour diner. My brother, at 21, still lived at home, sleeping until noon and playing video games until dawn. "He's still figuring things out," my mother explained when I stopped by one Sunday. Not everyone matures at the same pace. I looked at my brother sprawled on the couch in his pajamas at 3 in the afternoon and wondered what pace he was moving at. By 23, I'd opened my own small salon. The space was modest, just 4 styling chairs in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a tax office. But it was mine. I'd earned it with years of brutal work schedules, skipped meals, and nights spent too exhausted to do anything but sleep. My parents visited once during the first month. They looked around with polite interest, the way you might observe someone's hobby that doesn't quite make sense to you. "This is nice," my father said. "Must be expensive to maintain." "I manage," I replied. "Your brother's been looking at business opportunities too," my mother added. "He's very interested in entrepreneurship." Interested. That was the word they used for my brother's brief enthusiasms that never translated into actual effort. He was interested in photography until he realized it required practice. Interested in personal training until he learned about certification requirements. Interested in starting a podcast until he discovered editing was work. The salon grew slowly but steadily. I built a client base through word of mouth, long hours, and genuine care for the people who sat in my chair. One of those clients became more than that. She became my first real friend outside the twisted dynamics of my family. She saw through my carefully maintained composure during our sessions. When I mentioned my brother casually, she noticed the tension in my voice. When I talked about my parents, she recognized the careful editing I did. "They sound complicated," she said once, and that understatement made me laugh for the first time in weeks. She became my reminder that relationships didn't have to be transactions. That support didn't have to come with conditions, that I deserved to be seen as more than either a workhorse or a problem. By 26, I had something I'd never had before. Savings. Real savings. The kind that could become something tangible. Something permanent. I started looking at houses, scrolling through listings late at night, imagining what it would feel like to have a place that was truly mine. I mentioned it to my parents during one of our increasingly rare dinners together. "That's ambitious," my father said, in a tone that suggested it was more reckless than ambitious. "I've been saving for years," I replied. "I'm ready." My mother's expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. "Well, we'll see. These things take time." I didn't understand her response then. I didn't understand why my brother suddenly looked uncomfortable, or why the conversation moved quickly to other topics. I didn't understand why, over the following weeks, every time I brought up house hunting, my parents would steer the discussion toward my brother's latest struggles with employment or housing or life in general. I didn't understand yet that they'd already made plans for my money, plans that didn't include asking my permission. 3 years passed. 3 years of building something real from nothing. The salon wasn't just surviving anymore, it was thriving. I'd hired 2 other stylists, and my client base had grown through steady word of mouth and genuine care. Every week, I transferred money into my savings account. Not much at first, just whatever was left after rent and utilities. But it added up. Slowly, steadily, it grew into something that felt almost impossible, a future. I kept a notebook where I calculated and recalculated what I'd need for a down payment. I researched neighborhoods, studied mortgage rates, attended first-time homebuyer seminars on my days off. I did everything alone, the same way I'd done everything else. My friend from the salon, my first regular client who'd become something more like family, noticed my research. "House hunting?" she asked one afternoon, while I was mixing her color. "Maybe," I said. "Soon, I think." "That's amazing." Her smile was genuine, proud. "You've worked so hard for this." It was such a simple statement, but it meant everything. Someone saw my effort. Someone recognized that what I had wasn't luck or privilege. It was earned. My parents knew about my plans. I'd mentioned it several times over the past year during our monthly dinners, those increasingly strained gatherings where I showed up out of obligation more than desire. "Still thinking about buying a house?" my father would ask, in that tone suggesting I was discussing plans to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. "Still saving," I'd reply. Then my mother would sigh, that particular sigh signaling incoming guilt. "Your brother's having such a hard time finding stable housing. The rental market is so difficult for young people." My brother was 29. I'd been supporting myself since 18. "Maybe he should consider a roommate," I'd suggest, knowing it was pointless. "Share costs." "He's very particular about his living environment," my mother would say. "He needs his own space to really thrive." I'd lived in a studio apartment the size of most people's living rooms for 5 years. I'd shared a 2-bedroom with 3 other people before that. But sure, my brother needed his own space to thrive. The conversations always followed the same pattern. I'd mention my progress, my plans. My parents would listen with distracted attention, then pivot to my brother's struggles, his needs, his sensitivities. Every family dinner became a reminder that my achievements were footnotes to his failures. But I kept saving. By 27, I had enough for a down payment on a modest house in a decent neighborhood. Not anything fancy, just a small 2-bedroom with a yard big enough for some flowers. Something mine. My friend helped me research neighborhoods, checked crime statistics, reviewed school ratings even though I had no kids. She got excited about kitchen layouts and backyard potential. "You should start looking seriously," she said one day. "You're ready." I was ready. Financially, emotionally, practically ready. I'd worked for over a decade for this moment. I'd sacrificed social life, vacations, new clothes, nights out. I'd chosen the future over the present in 1,000 small ways. I mentioned my timeline at the next family dinner. "I'm planning to start seriously house hunting next month." My mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. My father exchanged a look with her, something quick and unreadable. "That's quite soon," my father said slowly. "I've been planning this for 3 years." "Yes, but..." my mother started, then stopped. "Have you thought about all the costs involved? Maintenance, repairs, property taxes?" "I've researched everything," I said. "I know what I'm getting into." My brother, who'd been quiet through most of dinner, suddenly spoke. "Must be nice to have that kind of money saved up." The resentment in his voice was palpable. I looked at him, at this man who'd never held a job longer than 4 months, who still asked our parents for money at nearly 30. "I worked for it," I said simply. "Some people have to work harder than others," my mother said quickly, placing her hand over my brother's. "Everyone's journey is different." I recognized the dismissal for what it was. My hard work was just easier circumstances in their narrative. My brother's inability to save money or take responsibility was a journey that deserved compassion. The evening ended earlier than usual. I noticed the way my parents kept exchanging glances, how they'd steer conversation away whenever I brought up specific houses. I noticed my brother's sullen silence, his bitter looks when I talked about my plans. I didn't understand what those looks meant yet. I didn't realize they weren't just reacting to my news. They were reacting to their own plans falling apart. Plans they'd made without asking me. Plans that involved my money, my sacrifice, my decade of work. Plans where I was a supporting character in the story of making my brother's life easier. I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there, scattered through years of conversations and redirected discussions. But I'd been too focused on my own goal, too determined to finally have something that was mine. I'd learned soon enough, in the most painful way possible. The discovery happened on a Tuesday afternoon, completely by accident. I'd stopped by my parents' house to drop off some paperwork they needed for their taxes. I did their taxes every year, one of those small responsibilities I'd somehow inherited without anyone asking. My brother certainly wasn't going to do it. I let myself in with my key, calling out as I entered. No response. Their cars were both in the driveway, so I figured they might be in the backyard or upstairs. I headed toward the kitchen to leave the papers on the counter. That's when I heard voices coming from my father's study. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear my mother's voice clearly. She mentioned next month, my mother was saying. That's perfect timing. The place on Maple Street is still available. Has he been to see it yet? My father asked. 3 times. He loves it. 2 bedrooms, nice yard, quiet neighborhood. Exactly what he needs to finally settle down. I froze in the hallway, papers still in my hand. And she has enough? My father asked. More than enough for the down payment. She's been very responsible with her saving, I'll give her that. The pride in her voice at my responsibility lasted exactly 1 sentence before she continued. It'll be good for her too. Finally contributing to the family in a meaningful way. My chest felt tight. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. What if she objects? My father asked. My mother laughed, actually laughed. She won't. She never does. Besides, it's time she helped her brother. He struggled for so long, and she's done so well with that little salon of hers. It's only fair. We should probably talk to her about it soon, my father said, though his tone suggested he wasn't particularly worried about my reaction. I'll bring it up at dinner this weekend. Frame it as helping family. She's always been the responsible one, the strong one. She'll understand it's the right thing to do. I stood there in the hallway, my whole body numb. They weren't suggesting I help my brother with a down payment. They were planning for me to buy him a house. My house. The house I'd spent a decade saving for, dreaming about, planning for. And they'd discussed it with him, multiple times. He'd looked at properties. He'd chosen one. They'd all decided together what to do with my money, my life, my future, the responsible one, the strong one. Those words I'd heard my entire life suddenly crystallized into their true meaning. The one who sacrifices. The one who gives up what she wants. The one who exists to make other people's lives easier. I backed away from the study, my footsteps careful and quiet on the hardwood floor. I set the tax papers on the entry table and left the house as silently as I'd entered, pulling the door closed with a soft click. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could trust myself to drive. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I felt sick, dizzy with the weight of what I'd learned. They'd never planned to let me buy my own house. They'd known about my savings for years, watched me scrimp and sacrifice, listened to me talk about my plans. And the whole time, they'd been making their own plans for that money. It wasn't even a request they were planning. It was an assumption, a foregone conclusion. Of course I would give my brother what he wanted. Of course I would sacrifice my dreams for his comfort. That's what I did. That's what I'd always done. Except I hadn't. Not really. I'd moved out at 18. I'd built my own business. I'd saved my own money. I'd made my own plans. But in their minds, I was still that teenager they could assign responsibilities to. Still that reliable daughter who would do what was expected without complaint. The strong one. The responsible one. The one who didn't need anything, because she could handle everything alone. I drove to the salon even though it was my day off. I let myself in through the back door and sat in my styling chair, staring at my reflection in the mirror. This woman who looked back at me had built something real. She'd earned every dollar in her savings account. She'd worked jobs that left her exhausted and in pain. She'd sacrificed years of her youth to create a future. And her family thought that future belonged to someone else. My friend called that evening. I told her everything, the words spilling out in an angry rush that left me breathless. That's insane, she said. You know that's completely insane, right? They think it's fair, I said. They think I owe him this. You don't owe anyone your life, she said firmly. What are you going to do? I looked around my apartment, this space I'd been planning to leave. I thought about the notebook full of calculations, the research, the dreams. I thought about my brother, 29 years old, and still expecting other people to solve his problems. I'm going to buy a house, I said. Good, my friend said. When? I pulled up the real estate website on my laptop, scrolling through listings I'd bookmarked weeks ago. Tomorrow, I said. I'm buying it tomorrow. The 30 days passed in a blur of inspections, appraisals, and final paperwork. I maintained my silence with my family, showing up to occasional dinners, deflecting questions about house hunting with vague responses about still looking. My mother seemed satisfied with this, probably reporting back that I was being appropriately manageable. I closed on the house on a Friday afternoon. The agent handed me the keys, and I sat in my car outside the empty cottage, holding those keys like they were made of something precious. They represented freedom, choice, autonomy. My friend helped me move that weekend. I didn't have much furniture, just what I'd accumulated in my small apartment. We made multiple trips in her truck, laughing and celebrating this milestone that was entirely my own. You need to tell them eventually, she said on Sunday evening as we assembled my bed frame. I know, I said. I just want a few days of peace first. Those few days ended on Tuesday. I was at the salon when my phone started ringing. My father. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. My mother. Then my brother. Then my father again. My stomach dropped. They knew. I checked my voicemail. My father's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk. Immediately. Call me back. I didn't call back. The calls continued throughout the day. 10, 15, 20 missed calls. Text messages flooded in. From my mother. How could you do this without telling us? From my father. Call me now. From my brother. You bought a house? Are you serious? I turned my phone on silent and tried to focus on work, but my hands were shaking. By the time I closed the salon that evening, I had 37 missed calls and too many messages to count. I sat in my car, staring at my phone, trying to summon courage. I drove to my new house instead. My house. I let myself in, turned on the lights, looked around at the space that was still mostly empty but completely mine. They couldn't take this from me. They could be angry, disappointed, furious, but they couldn't take this. My phone rang again. My father. I took a deep breath and answered. Where have you been? He demanded. We've been trying to reach you all day. I was working. We found out about the house. The agent mentioned it to someone your mother knows. How could you do this without discussing it with us? I didn't need to discuss it. It's my money. My decision. Your money? My father's voice rose. After everything we've done for you, after we raised you, supported you, I almost laughed. Supported me. They'd supported my brother. I'd supported myself since I was 16. You did support me until I was 18. Then I supported myself. This house was bought with money I earned. You knew your brother needed help, my father said. You knew he was looking for a place. We had plans. You had plans. Plans you made without asking me. Plans that involved my money and my future, and you never once thought to include me. Because we knew you'd be difficult about it. My mother's voice came through. She was on speakerphone. We knew you'd be selfish. Selfish, there it was, the word I'd been waiting for. I worked for 10 years for this house. I sacrificed everything for it. That's not selfish. That's called earning something. Your brother can't afford his own place, my mother said, crying now. He's struggling, and you could have helped him. You could have done the right thing. The right thing would have been asking me. The right thing would have been letting me make my own choices. The right thing would have been treating me like an adult instead of an ATM. How dare you, my father said. After everything, how dare you speak to your mother that way? I'm done with this conversation. I bought a house. It's mine. That's the end of it. If you don't transfer that house to your brother, my father said, his voice cold and hard, you are no longer part of this family. Do you understand? You will be choosing a house over your own flesh and blood. The ultimatum hung in the air. I looked around at my empty living room, at the walls that needed painting. I thought about my brother, who'd never worked for anything. I thought about my parents, who'd spent 3 decades treating me like my only value was in what I could provide. Then I guess I'm choosing the house, I said quietly. My mother's sob was loud through the speaker. You're destroying this family. No, I said. I'm finally choosing myself. There's a difference. I hung up before they could respond. My phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off completely. I sat on the floor of my empty house in the silence that followed and waited to feel guilty, waited for the doubt to creep in. It didn't come. Instead, I felt something lighter, something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. The silence lasted 3 days. 3 blessed days where I could breathe. I painted bedroom walls, refinished kitchen cabinets, planted herbs in the garden. Each small improvement felt like proof that this was real, that this was mine. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed with a notification, a text message to the family group chat, the one I'd forgotten I was still part of. My brother had sent a message meant for my father, but he'd accidentally sent it to the group instead. If we keep pressuring her, she'll crack. Mom needs to cry more when she talks to her. Make her feel guilty about breaking up the family. Dad should threaten to cut her out of the will. She'll cave within a week if we make her feel isolated enough. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood. It wasn't just that they were angry or disappointed. They had a strategy, a plan to manipulate me, to use guilt and threats as weapons to get what they wanted. Within seconds, my brother realized his mistake. Wrong chat, sorry. Then desperately, that was a joke. Obviously. My mother chimed in, we're just worried about you. Please call us. My father, we need to discuss this as a family. I took screenshots of everything before my brother could delete the messages. Then I left the group chat without responding. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or guilt. From anger. Pure, white-hot anger at the calculated nature of their manipulation. At the casual way my brother had outlined their strategy, as if breaking me down psychologically was just another problem to solve. My friend called that evening, her regular check-in. I told her everything. That's actually insane, she said. That's like genuinely unhinged behavior. They think it's normal, I said. They think they're entitled to my money, my work, my life, and they're shocked that I'm not playing along. What are you going to do? I looked at the screenshots on my phone. Evidence of exactly what they thought of me, how they saw me. Not as a person, but as an obstacle to overcome. I'm going to do nothing, I said. I'm going to live my life and let them deal with their own. Good, she said firmly. You don't owe them anything, especially not after this. But they weren't done trying. Over the next week, the calls started again. Not from my parents this time, but from extended family members I barely spoke to. My aunt, whom I'd seen maybe twice in the last 5 years. My grandmother, who'd never shown much interest in my life. Even my father's brother, who'd always been distant. They all called with variations of the same message. Family is important. Your brother is struggling. Couldn't you help just this once? Think about your parents' feelings. It became clear that my parents had launched a campaign, recruiting anyone they could to pressure me. They'd painted themselves as victims of my selfishness. My brother as someone deserving of pity and help. None of them asked my side of the story. None of them questioned why my brother, at nearly 30, couldn't support himself. None of them seemed to find it strange that my parents expected me to buy him a house. I kept my responses brief and consistent. This is between me and my immediate family. I appreciate your concern, but I won't be discussing this further. 2 weeks after the accidental group chat message, a letter arrived at my salon. Not at my new address, which they didn't have. At the salon, delivered by certified mail. It was from a law firm, threatening legal action if I didn't return the family's investment in my education and upbringing. They were claiming that my parents had financially supported me with the expectation of future reciprocity. It was nonsense, legally speaking, but it was telling. They were desperate enough to try intimidation tactics, to make official-sounding threats in the hope that I'd be scared into compliance. I consulted a lawyer anyway. She read the letter and actually laughed. "This is garbage," she said. "There's no legal basis for any of this, but I'd recommend sending a cease and desist letter. Let them know that any further harassment will result in actual legal action from you." I authorized the letter that same day. Something formal and intimidating, citing harassment laws and demanding all contact stop immediately. "Are you sure about this?" she asked before sending it. "This is pretty much the nuclear option with family." "They went nuclear first," I said. "I'm just responding." The letter was sent. For 48 hours, there was complete silence. Then my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking, assuming it was a client. "You sent your own parents a legal threat?" she said, her voice shaking with what I assumed was rage or tears or both. "You're really going to do this to us?" "You sent one first," I pointed out. "That was just to make you see reason. We never would have actually sued you. And my letter is just to make you stop harassing me," I said calmly, "which you'll notice has included calling from a different number to get around me blocking you." She hung up without another word. That evening, I sat in my living room, in the house they'd planned to take from me, surrounded by furniture I'd bought with my own money, and I felt something unexpected. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes not from having everything perfect, but from knowing exactly where you stand. They'd shown me who they were. I'd chosen who I wanted to be, and I'd never been more certain I'd made the right choice. The cease and desist letter worked, at least temporarily. The phone calls stopped. For 2 weeks, I lived in blessed silence, focusing on work and settling into my new home. I changed the locks, installed a security system with cameras. My lawyer had suggested it, not because she thought they'd do anything dangerous, but because documentation mattered. I also changed my passwords for everything: email, bank accounts, social media. After seeing how calculated their manipulation was, I wasn't taking chances. 2 weeks after the cease and desist letter, I posted on social media for the first time since buying the house. It was simple. A photo of my front porch at sunset, the garden visible in the frame. The caption read, "Sometimes the best investment is in yourself." Nothing dramatic, nothing accusatory, just a statement and a picture of something I'd earned. I posted it and went to bed. By morning, the post had dozens of comments. Most were congratulations from clients and acquaintances. Then I saw a comment from one of my regular clients. Finally, someone who actually worked for what they have. Not everyone gets things handed to them. It was innocent. She had no idea about my family situation. But to anyone who knew the context, it read like a shot at my brother. My phone started buzzing within the hour. Messages from people I barely knew, asking if everything was okay, mentioning they'd heard things were complicated with my family. My mother had been talking. She'd been sharing her version of events, painting herself as the victim. And now people were putting pieces together. My father called that afternoon furious. "You're publicly humiliating your brother," he said. "That post, those comments, everyone's talking about it." "I posted a picture of my house," I said calmly. "I can't control what other people comment. You know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to make him look bad." "I'm not trying to make anyone look anything. I'm living my life. If that makes him look bad by comparison, maybe that's something he should think about." "You've always been jealous of him," my father said. "You can't stand that he's the favorite." "I'm done with this conversation. Don't call me again." I hung up and blocked his number. Then my mother's. And my brother's. I should have done it weeks ago. That evening, I got a message from someone I'd gone to high school with. "Your brother is asking people to donate to a crowdfunding campaign. He's saying he needs help buying a home. I thought you should know." She sent me a link. There he was, with a carefully crafted sob story about financial hardship and family difficulties. He talked about struggling to find stable housing, about working hard but never quite getting ahead. He didn't mention quitting every job after weeks, didn't mention our parents supporting him for 3 decades, didn't mention they'd planned to use my money to buy him a house. Instead, he positioned himself as someone who'd fallen on hard times through no fault of his own. The campaign had been up for 3 days. He'd raised exactly $73. I took screenshots of everything. Then I made a decision. I posted the screenshots on my social media with a simple caption: "Interesting perspective on financial hardship from someone who's never held a job longer than 4 months and whose family planned to buy him a house with my savings." It was petty. I knew it was petty even as I hit post. But I was done being silent, done letting them control the narrative. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends, clients, acquaintances came out in support. They shared their own stories of entitled family members. My brother's crowdfunding campaign was flooded with comments, not sympathetic ones. People called him out for his entitlement, his manipulation. Someone even found old posts of him bragging about vacations, contradicting his claims of hardship. The campaign was taken down within hours. My friend called me that night. "Well, you certainly didn't hold back. Was it too much?" I asked, feeling a mix of satisfaction and guilt. "Honestly, no. They tried to manipulate you, harass you, legally threaten you. You just told the truth. The truth feels brutal sometimes," I said. "Truth usually does," she replied, "especially when people have been lying for so long." I looked at my phone, at the notifications still pouring in, at the messages of support. For years, I'd been silent. I'd been the strong one, the responsible one, the one who didn't cause problems. I'd let them write the story however they wanted, but I wasn't in the margins anymore. I had a house, a business, a life that was entirely my own. And if they wanted to make this public, if they wanted to play games with crowdfunding campaigns and social media sympathy, then fine, I'd play too. But I'd play with the truth. The fallout from exposing my brother's crowdfunding campaign was swift and far-reaching. Within 24 hours, the narrative had completely shifted. People who'd been sympathetic to my parents' version suddenly understood what had really been happening. Former family friends reached out with apologies, saying they'd only heard one side. Some of my mother's own circle quietly distanced themselves. My brother tried damage control. He posted a long explanation about how he'd been misunderstood and how family drama had gotten blown out of proportion. But the screenshots I'd posted were clear. The comments on his post were brutal. People called him out directly, asked about the jobs he'd quit, questioned why a 30-year-old expected others to buy him a house. He deleted the post within hours. Then he deleted his entire social media account. My parents tried a different approach. They sent a certified letter to my business, carefully worded by their lawyer. Not threatening this time. An attempt at manipulation disguised as reconciliation. They wanted to have a conversation about healing the family. They suggested family counseling. They offered to find a solution that works for everyone. I showed the letter to my lawyer. She read it and shook her head. They're trying to create a paper trail that makes them look reasonable. If you don't respond, they can claim you refused all attempts at reconciliation. So I have to respond? You should. But be brief. Acknowledge receipt and decline. Don't explain, don't justify. Just no. I sent a single-sentence response through my lawyer. I acknowledge receipt of your letter and decline your offer. Nothing more. No explanation. No door left open. The response from my father came directly to my phone from yet another unknown number. You're really going to throw away your entire family over money? I stared at the message before responding. You threw away your daughter the moment you decided my only value was in what I could provide to my brother. I blocked the number. My friend noticed how tired I was getting. Not physically tired, but emotionally exhausted from the constant vigilance. You should take a vacation, she suggested one evening. Get away for a week, somewhere they can't find you. I can't leave the salon for that long. Yes, you can. You have 2 other stylists. When's the last time you took a real break? I couldn't remember. Years, probably. Think about it. You've been in survival mode for months. You need to actually live a little. She was right. I'd been so focused on defending my choice that I'd forgotten there was supposed to be joy in having it. I booked a week at a small cabin 3 hours away. Somewhere without cell service, without internet, without any way for my family to reach me. I told no one where I was going except my friend and my lawyer. I packed books I'd been meaning to read and comfortable clothes. The first day at the cabin, I couldn't relax. I kept checking my phone obsessively, forgetting there was no signal. I was wound so tight I couldn't sit still. The second day was better. I took a long walk. I made breakfast and ate it slowly. I read half a book on the porch. By the third day, something started to loosen in my chest. That constant vigilance began to ease. I realized I'd been holding my breath for months, and I was finally starting to breathe normally again. I thought about my brother during those quiet days, not with anger anymore, but with something closer to pity. He was 30 and had never learned how to stand on his own. Our parents had done that to him, and now he was paying the price. I thought about my parents too, about how they'd built their entire identity around managing my brother's life. They'd invested everything in the wrong child, and now they were seeing the return on that investment. And I thought about myself, about the girl who'd worked in a warehouse at 16 while her brother went to summer camp, about the woman who'd opened a salon with determination and savings, about the person I'd become, despite everything. I liked who I'd become. I liked the woman who stood her ground, who chose herself, who refused to be manipulated. On the last day, I sat on the cabin porch and watched the sunset. I thought about going home, back to my house, my business, my life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt excited about it instead of defensive. They hadn't taken anything from me. They'd revealed themselves and I'd chosen accordingly. When I returned home, there were no messages waiting, no new attempts at contact. The silence felt different now, less like the calm before a storm and more like actual peace. My friend was waiting at my house when I pulled into the driveway. Well, she asked. How was it? Necessary, I said. Really necessary. We sat on the porch together, drinking coffee and talking about nothing important. Normal things. Work and books and plans for the weekend. I'd spent so long fighting that I'd forgotten what normal felt like. It felt good. 2 months passed. 2 months of actual peace, of living without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I worked at the salon, tended my garden, had dinner with my friend. Normal things that felt revolutionary. Then, on a Tuesday morning, another certified letter arrived at the salon. My heart sank. Not again. Not when things had finally settled. This time, it wasn't from my parents' lawyer. It was from a different law office. It was a notice of their intent to file a lawsuit. Not the empty threat from before, but actual formal notice. They were suing me for emotional distress and alienation of affection, and claims that made my head spin. The amount they were claiming, exactly the value of my house. I sat down heavily. They were actually doing this, trying to take my house through the legal system after everything else had failed. I called my lawyer immediately. They can't do this, right? I asked, hearing the panic in my voice. She was quiet as she read through the photographed letter. They can file it. Whether it has merit is another question. These claims are weak, very weak, but defending against even a frivolous lawsuit costs time and money. So they're just trying to bleed me dry? Probably. Or they're hoping you'll settle to make it go away, which I strongly advise against. I'm not settling. I'm not giving them a cent. Good. Then we'll file a motion to dismiss and counterclaim for legal fees. But I need to be honest. This could take months, maybe longer. And it's going to be expensive. I looked around my salon, at the business I'd built. I thought about my house. Do what you need to do, I'm not backing down. The lawsuit became public record within days. My clients asked about it. My friend was furious. Even people I barely knew reached out with support. My parents, meanwhile, told anyone who would listen that they'd been forced to take legal action because I'd refused all reasonable attempts at reconciliation. Some people believed them. A few clients stopped coming. Not many, but enough to notice. People from my parents' social circle. They'd chosen a side, and it wasn't mine. 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, my father called the salon directly. The business line. One of my stylists came to get me. Your father's on the phone. He says it's urgent. I considered not taking it, but something in me needed to hear what he had to say. Yes? I said, my voice cold. We need to talk, before this gets any further. You filed a lawsuit against me. I think we're pretty far already. That can all go away. We can drop it today. We just need you to be reasonable. Reasonable. What does reasonable mean to you? Transfer the house to your brother, or sell it and give him the proceeds. We're not trying to punish you. We just want what's fair. I almost laughed. You filed a lawsuit for emotional distress. You're trying to take my house through the courts after manipulation, harassment, and public humiliation didn't work. And you think that's not punishment? Your brother is in a bad place, my father said, his voice cracking. He's living in a studio apartment he can't afford. He's depressed. He's struggling, and you could help him, and you're choosing not to. He's 30 years old. He's struggling because you never taught him how to work, how to stand on his own. You created this situation, not me. So you're going to let your own brother suffer? I'm going to let my adult brother experience the natural consequences of his choices and your parenting. If you don't drop this, we're going forward with the lawsuit. We'll take this all the way. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. They already know, because you've been telling them, and it hasn't worked. So go ahead, file your lawsuit. But I'm not giving you my house, and I'm not giving you my money, and I'm not giving you one more second of my peace. I hung up before he could respond. My hand was shaking. One of my stylists came over and squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I will be. That evening, I met with my lawyer to go over strategy. She'd filed the motion to dismiss and the counterclaim for legal fees. Now we waited. The judge will likely see this for what it is, a shakedown. But we need to be prepared for the possibility it goes to trial. How long could that take? Worst case? A year. Maybe more. A year of this hanging over my head. I can handle a year, I said, with more confidence than I felt. I drove home and sat on the porch in the growing dark. I thought about giving up, about how much easier it would be to just sell the house, give them what they wanted, and move on. But then I thought about what that would mean. They'd won. Manipulation and harassment and legal intimidation actually worked. I'd learned nothing, changed nothing, chosen nothing. I'd bought this house to prove I could choose myself. Giving it up now would be the ultimate betrayal of everything I'd fought for. So I wouldn't. No matter how long it took, no matter how much it cost, no matter how exhausting it became, this was my line in the sand, and I wasn't moving. 4 months into the lawsuit, something shifted. My lawyer called with news. Their lawyer wants to meet, off the record, to discuss settlement. I already told them no settlement. I know, but hear me out. Our motion to dismiss was granted on 2 of their 3 claims. The judge called them without merit. The only claim still standing is weak, and their lawyer knows it. So they want to negotiate their way out before they look worse? Probably. But it's also an opportunity. We can make demands, including payment of your legal fees. I thought about it. 4 months of stress, of legal bills piling up. Okay, but I'm not giving up anything. Not the house, not money, nothing. Understood. The meeting was held at a neutral location, a conference room downtown. My lawyer and I arrived first. My parents' lawyer came in alone, looking tired. "Where are my parents?" I asked. I advised them not to attend. This conversation will be more productive without emotions running high. He was probably right. He laid out their position, which had changed significantly. They were willing to drop the lawsuit completely if I agreed to give my brother $20,000. "No," I said immediately. "It's significantly less than they were originally seeking. It's $20,000 more than they deserve. They've harassed me, threatened me, and filed a frivolous lawsuit. And now they want me to pay them for the privilege of making it stop? My clients feel they've been reasonable," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "Your clients," my lawyer said, "have filed a lawsuit that's been mostly dismissed already. The remaining claim is weak. When this goes to trial, not only will they lose, but the judge may award my client her legal fees, which are considerable." He was quiet. "What would your client accept?" "Complete dismissal with prejudice, meaning they can never file these claims again, a written apology, and payment of my client's legal fees to date. They'll never agree to payment of fees. Then we'll see them in court," I said, standing up. "I'm done negotiating with people who think I owe them my life." We left. As we walked to the parking garage, my lawyer grinned. That was satisfying. "Think they'll agree?" "To the legal fees? Probably not, but they might agree to everything else just to make this go away. They're losing in the court of public opinion and in actual court." 3 days later, their lawyer called back. They'd agree to dismiss with prejudice and provide a written statement. Not an apology, but a statement acknowledging the dismissal and agreeing to no further legal action. They wouldn't pay my legal fees. "Take it," my lawyer advised. "You've won. They're giving up. The legal fees suck, but you'll recover, and this ends it definitively." I thought about holding out, but I was tired, so tired of fighting. "Okay, I'll take it." The paperwork was filed within a week. The lawsuit was officially dismissed with prejudice. The written statement was vague and legalistic, but it was there. They were done. My friend took me out to dinner to celebrate. "How does it feel?" "Strange, like I should feel more relieved than I do." "You've been in fight mode for almost a year. It takes time to come down from that." She was right. Even though it was over, I still found myself checking my phone obsessively, still jumped when the salon phone rang. But slowly, over the following weeks, the tension began to ease. No more calls. No more letters. No more threats. Just silence. Real silence. The kind that meant it was actually over. 1 month after the lawsuit was dismissed, I was at the grocery store when I saw my brother. He was in the produce section, looking thin and tired, wearing clothes that had seen better days. We made eye contact. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he looked away first and walked quickly in the other direction. I stood there, holding a bag of apples, feeling something complicated. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Something closer to sadness for what could have been different if our parents had raised us both instead of just him. But he was 30 years old now. Whatever he did with his life from here was his choice. I couldn't fix him. Couldn't save him. Couldn't make up for decades of learned helplessness. All I could do was live my own life. I finished my shopping and went home to my house. I made dinner in my kitchen, ate it on my porch, watched the sunset over my garden. It was mine. All of it. Earned through work and sacrifice and the courage to choose myself. They'd tried everything. Manipulation, guilt, harassment, legal threats, lawsuits. And I'd survived all of it. More than survived. I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed them or gotten revenge. I'd won because I'd kept what was mine. Because I'd refused to let them rewrite my story or steal my future. I'd won because I was free. 6 months after the lawsuit was dismissed, I thought the story was over. I'd moved on with my life, focused on the salon, enjoyed my house. The past felt like something I'd survived and left behind. Then my brother showed up at my door. It was a Saturday morning. I was still in pajamas drinking coffee on the porch when I saw him walking up the driveway. He looked worse than at the grocery store. Thinner, more tired, wearing the same jacket. My first instinct was to go inside and lock the door. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the lingering remnants of the sister I'd once been. "What do you want?" I asked, not standing up, not inviting him closer. "Can I talk to you just for a minute?" "You have 5 minutes, talk from there." I gestured to where he stood, several feet from the porch. He swallowed hard. "I need a place to stay. Just temporarily. A week, maybe 2. I got evicted and I have nowhere else to go." I should have felt satisfaction. This was the natural consequence of his choices. But mostly I just felt tired. No, I said simply. Please, he said, tears in his eyes. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've been terrible. But I'm desperate. Mom and Dad cut me off. They said if I couldn't figure it out on my own by now, they were done helping me. That surprised me. After everything they'd done to try to get me to support him, they'd finally given up. So now you come to me, the sister you tried to steal from, the one you and Mom and Dad harassed and sued. Now that they've abandoned you, I'm supposed to step in? I didn't know it would go this far, he said, his voice breaking. I swear, I didn't think they'd actually sue you. That was all them. I just wanted help. And they said you'd come around eventually. You knew exactly what they were planning. You looked at houses. You chose the one you wanted. You were part of it from the beginning. I was 29 and still living with my parents. I didn't know how to do anything else. They always fixed everything for me. I thought this was just another thing they'd fix. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who'd had every advantage and squandered all of it. You're 30 now. Still don't know how to do anything? I have a job. I've been working at a warehouse for 3 months. It doesn't pay much, but it's steady. I couldn't make rent this month after paying back some debts. 3 months. The longest he'd ever held a job, as far as I knew. Where were you planning to go after 2 weeks here? I don't know. I was just trying to solve the immediate problem. There it was. The pattern that had defined his entire life. Never thinking ahead, never planning, just lurching from crisis to crisis. I can't help you. Not because I'm cruel or heartless. Because helping you now would just be another reset button. Another way to avoid consequences. You need to figure this out yourself. I don't know how, he said, genuinely lost. Then learn. The way I did. The way millions of people do every day. You call shelters. You ask about assistance programs. You reach out to friends. You make a plan. You do it scared and uncertain and without a safety net, because that's what being an adult means. You really won't help me at all? Not even with information about where to go? I pulled out my phone and searched for resources. I forwarded him a list of shelters, assistance programs, food banks, and job training services. That's all the help I can give you. Information. What you do with it is up to you. He looked at his phone. You really hate me that much? I don't hate you. I pity you. Our parents broke you by never letting you struggle, never letting you fail, never teaching you that you were capable. They loved you in the worst way possible. And I can't fix what they did to you. Only you can do that. By staying in a shelter and eating at food banks? By learning that you can survive hard things? By discovering that you're more capable than they ever let you believe? By building something yourself instead of expecting it to be handed to you? He was quiet. You're really not going to let me stay here? No. Even knowing I might end up on the street? You won't end up on the street if you use those resources. But even if you did, that's your responsibility, not mine. I can't save you from yourself. He turned to leave, then looked back. I'm sorry. For all of it. The house thing, the lawsuit, everything. I'm sorry. It was the first time he'd ever apologized to me for anything. I believe you, but that doesn't change my answer. He nodded and walked away. I watched him reach the street, hesitate, then pull out his phone and start scrolling through the resources I'd sent. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My friend called an hour later. She'd seen my brother leaving. Are you okay? I think so. I just turned away my brother who was asking for help. You gave him resources. That is help, just not the kind that would enable him. He apologized. Good. He should have. Did it change anything? No. But it was something. I sat on my porch long after, thinking about the boy my brother had been and the man he'd become, thinking about whether he'd actually use those resources or find another person to manipulate. But mostly, I thought about the fact that it wasn't my problem anymore. He was 30 years old. What happened next was up to him, and I was finally, truly free. 1 year later, I was at the salon when a familiar face appeared. My mother. She looked older, tired beyond physical exhaustion. She stood in the doorway, not quite entering, waiting for permission. I was with a client, mid-cut. I caught her eye in the mirror and gestured to the waiting area. She sat quietly. It took 20 minutes to finish. When the client left, I locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. What do you want? To talk. If you'll let me. I gestured to a styling chair. She sat, and I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you. This place, your house, everything you've built. I didn't respond. The words felt like they should mean something. but they didn't. Your brother has been living in a group home for 6 months. He's still working at that warehouse. He's been promoted twice. He seems different. Good for him, I said. Your father and I have been in therapy, trying to understand where we went wrong. And have you figured it out? She was quiet. We broke him. We loved him so much we never let him grow up. And we were so hard on you that you had to grow up too fast. It was the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd ever gotten. Why are you here? I wanted to apologize. For everything. The favoritism, the harassment, the lawsuit, for not seeing you as a person instead of just a resource. Okay. Apology noted. I know it doesn't fix anything. I'm not here asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What we did to you. I studied her face. She just looked sad and tired and genuinely remorseful. You didn't take anything from me. You tried. But I didn't let you. That's the difference. I know. That's why I'm proud of you. You were strong enough to stand up to us. He's learning too. You said so yourself. At 30. He's learning at 30 what you knew at 18. We sat in silence. Then she stood. I won't take more of your time. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. And I'm sorry it took losing you for me to understand. What about Dad? Her expression flickered. He's working on it. He's more stubborn, but he's trying. She walked to the door, then paused. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. No expectations. Maybe someday, I said. She nodded and left. I stood in my empty salon, processing. It hadn't fixed anything, but it was something. That evening, I told my friend over dinner. How do you feel? Oddly, nothing. Like she was a stranger apologizing for something that happened to someone else. Maybe that's growth. You've moved on so completely that their drama doesn't touch you anymore. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not forgiveness, just indifference. 3 months later, I saw my brother at a coffee shop. He was with people, laughing. He looked healthier. He saw me and waved, not coming over, just acknowledging my existence. I waved back. It was enough. 2 years after I bought my house, I expanded the salon, hired 2 more stylists, added chairs. The business was thriving. My friend had become family in every way that mattered. She was the sister I'd chosen. My house had become a home, the walls I'd painted, the garden I'd grown. Every corner was mine, earned through work and sacrifice. My parents sent a birthday card. Simple, no pressure. I sent a polite thank you text. We weren't reconciled, probably never would be. But we'd reached a detente. My brother kept his warehouse job. Got an apartment with a roommate, started community college part-time. I heard updates through acquaintances. I was glad for him, in an abstract way. But his journey was his own, not my responsibility. I was 30 now, the same age my brother had been when he'd shown up desperate at my door. I thought about the girl I'd been at 16, working while he went to summer camp, the young woman at 23, opening a salon with determination, the person at 27, standing in an empty house with keys in hand. I'd fought for every single thing I had. No one had given me anything, and somehow, that made it all more precious. I sat on my porch one evening, watching the sunset over my garden, drinking coffee in my house earned through a decade of work. My phone buzzed. My friend asking if I wanted to catch a movie tomorrow. I smiled and texted yes. This was my life, built by my hands, chosen by my heart, earned through my refusal to be anything less than what I knew I could be. They'd tried to take it from me. They'd failed. Because in the end, I didn't just win a house. I won myself, and that was worth everything.